I call the meeting to order, the special meeting of the Airport Commission at 10:05. First item on the agenda is the agenda. Helen, do you want to make a motion?
I move we accept the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Second, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, no. All opposed, no. So ordered. Next item is the section 3.01, grant anticipation note. Somebody, Helen, want to make a motion?
Are we going to accept it? I move we accept the grant motion. Is that what you want?
Yeah. Is there a second? Okay, some staff, please explain that for us. This is a big item. Go ahead.
Sure, Maria, I'll start, and then we can kind of tag team a little bit here. So this is actually a very typical approval that you've seen in the past annually. The difference with this one is slightly larger than our previous grant anticipation notes, and just in general, this is literally a note, a financial note in anticipation of grant coming to the Burlington Airport. As you can see from the memo, there's a pretty extensive list of capital projects that have been awarded to the Burlington Airport from the FAA. This $23 million GAN, or grant anticipation note, is in anticipation of those payments from the FAA as we proceed with projects. The reason it's a little bit larger this year is we just wanted to make sure we had the financial backing in case there was any issues with cash flow coming from the FAA to the airport. This recovers us very quickly from a cash standpoint. Marie, is there anything you wanted to add?
Well, we have an existing $7 million line grant anticipation note already in play that got signed at the end of 2019. So in the December, I think it actually got signed. And what we're doing is we're upping it to 23 million. And that is just sort of ensuring that if there are any delays in terms of getting any of those reimbursements in, that we can continue to do business of what really matters and improve our infrastructure here at the airport. And it's backed and secured by these grants that we have in hand. So it's just sort of taking care of, this will be for a year. It'll go for a year. We'll have this in place and we'll draw on it as we need, especially if we see that there's going to be an extended delay in getting timely reimbursements, because we pay those bills on those projects and then we request reimbursement. So it's just having it, making sure that we're taking care of things in good order as far as our cash goes in our checking account.
Tim, do you have any questions?
I had just one. So this 23 million, these are these grants that have already been approved and we just don't get the funding until the project is complete?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
So all of our FAA grants, all that entire list that you see in the memo has already been approved by the FAA, awarded to us. It has gone through you in the past few years, probably 2 years, 1 to 2 years. And the way these grants work is a complete reimbursement. So we spend the money and then request it from the FAA.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure you weren't anticipating. I know the word's anticipation. I want to make sure we were anticipating some grant being issued, that these are all things that actually have been granted. We just don't get the money until the project is complete.
Correct. So there's that lag but on the cash.
Right.
Yep.
Got it.
Tim, you all set?
I'm all set. Thank you, Bill.
And
Helen,
another part of your question that I want to just make sure that as we are paying bills, we are able to send those in. We request a reimbursement along the way. We don't wait until the end of the project. We request it along the way. So we're not holding out on a $7 million project. We're not holding out until we get to the end, just to clarify that.
And are you required to pay down the note in pieces as those monies come in, or how does that work?
We do. As soon as we get money, so if I have borrowed down, $500,000 on an AIP, as soon as I get the reimbursement back, the first thing that I do is pay back the bank. And then, because they've covered our expense. So we wrote the check, I will draw down from this line. So now I reimburse myself And then I turn around, and once the FAA reimburses us, I give that money right back to the bank.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
Helen?
My only question, somewhere I was reading about the hotel, but that isn't part of this. We haven't received a grant to build that, correct?
That's correct. That is not part of this at all.
Okay.
We have a developer that is developing the hotel. There's no
Gotcha.
expenditures coming from the airport.
Okay, thank you.
You all set? I have a question.
Yeah.
How about interest on this grant note? Who pays the interest?
That's a great question. So right now we'll pay the interest, but we're going to, on these AIPs, we're going to do our best to estimate the interest cost that we anticipate, and we're going to put that as part of our PFC application that we're working on today, like that we'll be getting done in the next month or so. And it will be able to be reimbursed from our PFC dollars to pay on those particular interest costs.
Well, if your PFC is down because of lack of passengers, are you going to be in the red in doing so?
We won't be in the red in doing so, but it extends out those PFCs. If they go down a lot, then it will take longer for us to be able to collect all those dollars. We have quite a bit in the PFC account right now.
And that's so you're comfortable in paying these notes off in due course. Is that fair to say? Okay.
Yeah, we would pay them off as they're due. The interest is paid monthly on these particular notes, so we don't defer that payment. But as time allows and as our PFC revenues allows, we are able to recoup those costs, even if it's down the road due to if the PFC collection should drop a bit.
Okay. Any questions from anyone else?
No.
If so, go ahead. Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, no. So ordered. That passes unanimously. Next item is item 3.02, the revenue anticipation note. Tim, a motion?
Sure, I move that we approve the recommendation for the $11.1 million revenue anticipation note.
Is there a second?
Second.
Helen? Motion second. We'll have some discussion. Somebody on staff want to explain this?
So this is somewhat similar to the grant anticipation note, except obviously instead of grants, these are this note is to help us and of course is in anticipation of potential revenue. This is much different. You've never seen a revenue anticipation note come to you before in the past, and this is a projected revenue loss from the airport due to the COVID-19 situation. This was calculated based on a number of revenue losses throughout the airport. The big one, as you can imagine, is our parking garage, which we typically are under 5% occupancy at during these days, which is a significant source of our revenue. There's many other aspects to this, from airline payments, which we are not able to waive, and we do have significant guidance from the FAA on that. We can't waive any really rents or anything at the airport. But there is still going to be losses. Obviously, with a significant decrease in passengers, you have a decrease in parking, concessions, and airline revenues coming to the airport. This $11 million helps us recover some of those losses immediately so that we can continue operating under our normal expenditure budget as best as we can. We certainly are looking at everything, all angles as we move forward, including expenditures, because of course there's going to be some significant and challenging decisions as we move forward, and that goes beyond the airport, I imagine. So that's just kind of the high level. And Jean or Marie, if you want to add anything else.
Jean? Marie?
Unmute yourself, Jean.
Nick, do I do it or is Nick?
No, you go ahead, Jean. Everybody can hear you now.
Okay. So we, like Nick said, we're restricted from waiving debt. But what this will do is this will allow us time to negotiate and amortize potential relationships. Fortunately, like rental cars and other folks like that have overpaid so that they can use some of their credits moving forward. We always have a settlement up at the end of the year. There are others, like the airlines that won't be, they will owe us money. And what we're trying to do is be a good partner and, amortize it probably, over a period of time that is feasible for them and us. So, this is just a tool for us until we figure out how much stimulus dollars we're getting, how the relationships are going to end up. It's basically allowing us to do what we need to do until we're able to do it the way we were doing it. And it's helping us get to what will be a new norm for the airport. We certainly probably will not see what was for some time if we do see it, but we expect that the new norm will have a different formula. It'll have potentially a different amortization, and I think the whole world will. So that's what this is about.
Marie, want to comment?
I think, unless you have other questions, I think like Nick and Jean has said, we're just trying to make sure that we have the ability to keep paying all of our bills. As all businesses are having to think about that today in terms of if our revenues that are coming in the door are smaller right now, our expenses like payroll or other such things, or renting the airfield that we are required to do for safety reasons or for the FAA, some of those things we can't stop. So we just want to make sure we have this in place as good custodials and good business people at the airport.
And one thing I do want to add just to make you all aware, because it is very related to revenue losses and similar to the revenue anticipation. We are working with the FAA very closely. As you've seen, the CARES Act that was recently passed does include airport supplemental funding, and that funding is in relationship to the revenues that have been lost at certain airports, at all commercial service airports. We of course are on that list. The calculation is still ongoing, and from $3 to $8 million in a grant from the FAA to help recover some of the revenue losses, as well as help with some of those capital projects from the grant anticipation note memo. So that's a really good story, because we're not alone. The FAA and the DOT is helping us with some of those losses.
Why DOT?
FAA reports to the DOT.
Okay.
Kind of lump them together. Yeah.
All right. Helen, have any questions?
Yeah, I do. How long is this? A year, or as long as you need? What's the extent of this kind of borrowing for cash flow?
This is for 1 year. So once we sign this, a year from once we sign the document, it will be owed and fully paid back. Okay.
And it doesn't, I think, as I understand how these things work, it doesn't accrue interest until you start using it. Is that right?
And I think the way this will come down is we will get all the money at once with a revenue anticipation note. So we will start accruing interest on day one because we draw it all down. That's the way that this particular thing works. It's not like a line of credit.
Okay. And then sort of related to this, are you foreseeing any layoffs, or are you trying to, make everyone whole for the time being until you figure out where we go?
That's a great question. We're not laying off anybody. In fact, that grant that I was just mentioning from the FAA requires us to continue until the end of the year to make sure that we're whole. And the city, Jean, the mayor, are very adamant about continuing full operations with our staff immediately. The airlines are also part of that. The airlines are also part of that package. And they're receiving some funding too, much more funding from the CARES Act, and they also have requirements to keep staff on board.
Okay, good. That sounds reasonable. I had another question and I lost it.
Helen, you hear me? So we also are pretty lean and mean. We don't, whether you have, the operations that we have today or that we have the operations that we had yesterday, we still need the same number of people. Like when we have a snowstorm, we couldn't do and run the airport with less people. It's pretty lean and mean, what we have already. We run it pretty lean. So it's not like we have a lot of flexibility either besides those other standards that have been implemented.
Great. And one last question, I remembered it. Have you gotten any extension of time from the FAA with the sale of the Kirby cottages?
No, we haven't. I talk with Gail, who's the head of FAA New England, probably every day, and even weekends. So that has not come up, and no, we haven't. And I'm going to do everything I can to meet that obligation.
Great. Okay.
Tim, you got any questions?
I do. So the notice for 11.1 million, and of that 2.5 is going for the Kirby cottages. So that leaves 8.6 million to cover operations. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And I heard here it was 12 notes, but 12 months, but I thought I read it was for 6 months. So can you confirm how long the 8.6 million is, how long that will cover operations for?
That's a 6-month projection. That should read the 6-month projection.
Okay. So that's a rate of about 1.5 million, just under 1.5 million a month. Is that? Okay. And how much of a revenue drop, obviously you had to do some projections to come up with that number of 11.1. So how much is that all in a revenue drop of 1.4 million a month, or is the revenue drop larger than that, but there are some expense savings that netted out to 1.4?
That right now is considering only the revenue loss.
Okay.
And that gives us a little bit more flexibility so that we can plan accordingly with changes in expenditures as we move forward.
Okay.
And some of those on the revenue loss is that may be deferred revenue. So giving the airlines, the car rentals additional time to pay. So this note helps us cover our cash during that time while we give them maybe some figure out we are not forgiving what they owe necessarily. But the revenues are definitely be down. Landing fees will be down. Less people in the airport is down.
So some of that 1.4 is deferred and some of that is permanently lost.
Correct. Like the garage is permanently lost. I'll never get that back.
Okay.
Tim, you all set?
And then the other related question I have, it's not really related to this directly, but will we be seeing a bunch of budget amendments soon, given everything that's going on?
You will be seeing, as we come into the end of the year, there's always some moving around or shifting on the budget amendments. I know that I will be trying to figure out doing a budget amendment on Kirby cottages, on anticipated expenses, we'll say like commission or other such expenditures, to put in the right budget account. So I have to figure out where I'm going to reduce and where we'll be covering those expenses. The commission could happen in this year, it could happen in next year, or some combination thereof. So just trying to figure out the best way to do that.
Okay, I didn't know if we were going to see, in light of the revenue drop, if there were going to be other budget adjustments that were sort of beyond the normal ones we see at the end of the fiscal year.
I hadn't planned on that yet, but if I see the need to do that, I'll do that. Otherwise, our revenues will just be less than what like a garage, good example, be less than what we maybe budgeted for, depending on the severity and the length of the impact of this on us.
Okay, thanks. I'm all set, Bill.
Okay, Marie or Nick, I assume you've made some estimates that are on the conservative side, because that's the way you do business, and there's nothing wrong with that. But supposing that revenues are far shorter than your estimates, is there a safety net that is available to recover some of those revenues that were deeper than anticipated?
Well, that's a great question, Bill, and you're absolutely right. We're being very conservative on those estimates. That safety net for us right now are twofold. One is that grant from the FAA right now. That's a very large safety net in conjunction with this revenue anticipation note. And then secondly, if we do need to increase this or move forward again later in the year or beyond the 6 months or before, if the estimates are higher than anticipated, then Marie and downtown with Rich Goodwin and the CAO's office, we can move forward with additional tools to help us.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions?
Not
If
from
so,
me.
Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor of adopting resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. So ordered. Next item on the agenda is adjournment. And you want to talk something about that, Nick, before we have a motion?
Yeah, just real quickly, I just want to remind, if you saw Hannah's email, instead of a regular commission meeting next Wednesday, the 15th, we'd like to move it to Wednesday, April 22nd at 4 p.m. And we'll have a full package and a full update for you on Wednesday, April 22nd.
Okay. Any questions of Nick on that item?
No.
The chair will accept. Helen, want to make a motion to adjourn?
I move adjournment.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. We're
Aye.
hereby adjourned. Good meeting, guys. Thanks for participation.